I'm gonna double check the live feed, make sure everything is good. Refresh. Okay. Okay. All right. We are live. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us once again. Greg and I have a pretty good topic to discuss with you all. And we've been talking throughout the week, so it's right on time in terms of some of the conversation that we want to have with you all. Before we get started, I want to thank you all for watching the channel, for tuning in, for commenting. I saw some of the comments on the videos, and I really appreciate the engagement as well too. Thank you all for that. If you don't know, my name is Maestro Stevens, and I'm with Greg Doss, and we've been talking with each other in terms of all this litigation convo for a few months now. Greg has helped me a lot when it comes to some of my pursuit of representing myself. And before we dive deep into it, I'm gonna let Greg get into his spiel, and then I'll get right back on.
My man calls it a spiel, but I have to give the spiel, and I'm going to put this in the chat room for those who may come on in a little while. One of the things is that I double any super chats or Cash App. I'll put the information in there. There's a better deal for the Cash App than the super chat. The super chat is whatever the super chat is. I take that off of any coaching sessions. If you Cash App me directly, I double Cash Apps. Super chats are 1 for 1. Cash Apps are double off. Y'all can thank Maestro for that, because we're going to talk about a couple of things he may not want me to say to you all as what he's told me about. And I think I need to be a little bit more transparent to what the work I put in to do this, Maestro, and the toughness and the coaching aspect that we talked about off air, and that I'm not for everybody. But as always, I always tell people I think they should look for legal counsel, and I think I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't tell you exactly how difficult this is. So let me say this right now. If you happen to pop in and you super chat, we'll see it. I'll shout you out on air, and dollar for dollar off your next session. 50 gets you 50 off, 100 gets you 100 off. Cash apping me is a better deal. Send it to $GDNAPSC, and I will double that for you. 50 becomes 100 off, 100 becomes 200 off. Any amount doubled up to the price of whatever the session is that you wanted to book, and I'll send you your discount code that's good for 90 days via your email. So I think that's probably a little bit better situation anyway. I'll still send it to you if you super chat me. Within 24 hours, you'll get your link so that you can set up your session. And is there anything I'm forgetting other than to tell you all what everybody finds it so boring, that I'm not an attorney? I don't have a license to practice law. I do not practice law. What I've done is study law, tell people what I learned, how I gather information. So I don't give information as advice to apply to your specific case, but it's general information regarding the law and lawful principles, as by the way belongs to the people. So please use any information obtained for education or edification only. And the reason I say that is because I want nothing, absolutely nothing I say to be construed to be legal advice. If you feel you need legal advice, I would highly encourage you to hire a licensed and hopefully competent attorney and be legally advised. I'm trying to pull up my my new disclaimers to make sure everything is covered. No matter how much money you give me, it will never establish a attorney style relationship at all. GD Napsy is not a law firm. Chagret Doss is not an attorney. I'm not your attorney. I don't give legal advice or represent anyone in court. I provide confidence coaching, personal edification, and educational support only by sharing my personal experience as a pro se litigant to help you stand strong, think clearly, and move with power. For legal advice about your specific situation, I strongly encourage you to consult with, and when necessary, hire a licensed attorney in your state and or jurisdiction. I think I've covered everything that you need to. And as always, I'm going to start saying hashtag GD Napsy, hashtag stand firm. And of course, I'm Greg Doss and the ultimate DJ Squid. And I'll be, thanks to my man Maestro, launching the 25th my new podcast series, GD, the GD Squid podcast, or Greg Dawson, DJ Squid podcast. And we'll be bringing on some of the voices that you all have come used to hearing. I'm sure Maestro hopefully will stop by and give us some insight into what he does. We have Tandrick will be on. I'm sure Miss Bennell will be on, and a couple local politicians. We'll talk about everything from child support to not just self-representation, but political advocacy within your wherever you may live. Several calls to actions. I'll have a PSA for veterans segment as well, or show, where I speak specifically to veteran issues, using your benefits, knowing how to maximize on getting your service connections if you're eligible for that, and a host of other things. I'll bring in professionals from those areas, and I think it's going to be a pretty interesting twist from me just being the Greg and the video guy. And I believe the podcast will help more people get the message, and hopefully we can do more to help society at large. With that being said, I'll turn it back over to the ultimate show host, Mr. Maestro. And hopefully I didn't forget anything.
No, I think you did a good job. I think you covered everything. Yeah, I think that's going to be a great opportunity in terms of the podcast, and that's going to be a new adventure for you. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to be looking out for that. I know I certainly will as well. And it's just about getting the word out there, getting or making people more aware, of the information, sharing the information. But then I think one of the things that I took from your message was, you having more guests on, more people that are going to be in professional settings and non-professional settings. And I think that that's going to be a good thing for the audience to be able to grasp, to be able to hear from, because, sometimes we want to hear from people that are doing things in certain positions that we're not accustomed to, and hearing their stories, and how they dealt with certain things that we're talking about. So I think that that's going to be an awesome thing, a new chapter for you.
Absolutely. And I appreciate your motivation. You pushed me to become motivated to do some of these things that obviously I need to do, and I will get on it, and hopefully people will find information there. And also I'll take suggestions from people for shows or topics that you may want me to cover beyond what I already have listed. I'm going to speak about what made Greg Greg. So Maestro will be quiet about that part, because there's the background that, and it's not just Maestro, because UB said the same thing. The background, what got me here. Ms. Bennell has said that. A kid's mom actually has said that people don't know the sleepless nights, the hours, and what over the course of 20 years or so of self-representation, and at least the last 15 years of self-representation, with an elevated approach to it and a full-on commitment to all of my self-representation.
Yeah, so it's a lot. And that's the thing that I try to tell people, or I strive to let the audience and the public know, that you have such a huge background and different facets of skill sets and trades, let alone the information when it comes to litigation, that it would be really hard for somebody to become a carbon copy of yourself. It would be really hard for somebody to be able to walk down that path. So the best thing I think most people can do, and this is the reason why I'm such an advocate for using the technology to help compensate for the lack thereof, is because you can't just take a pill or take a shot and I'll eventually just get this information. It doesn't work that way. You can't take a pill or a shot to just become professional. You have to work toward it, and nobody's just going to be able to give you their history and their experience. You got to earn it. So that's why I believe 100% being realistic, there's not going to be another you. And at least I don't want people to take the information that you share and think, because if they work as hard as you in this, that they're going to also become you. It ain't going to work like that. So use the technology, use your what do they say? Soft skills, hard skills. As you always say, Greg, you got to learn how to read. I mean, if you don't know how to read, you got to learn how to read. You got to read a lot. You got to review a lot, because it's hard to review something you can't read. And in terms of using the AI, that could do a lot for a lot of people if you use it correctly. I think that's one of the best tools.
And that's one thing. That's what I tell everybody who watches me here, particularly, especially me here with Maestro, that despite my reluctance and my apprehension to using AI beyond some of the basic stuff, because you found out, and I told you, there were some people who thought I was an AI creation versus a person who learned how to use the AI, really because of you, to make it my partner in some of the later filings. But prior to meeting you, I was not using AI that often. I mean, I used AI when it came to the research tools or whatever AI was incorporated into the research tools like Westlaw, Nexus, Lexis. At the time, I didn't have Open Case. I had, I forgot some of the other legal tools, Case Text. I think it's called Case Mine, some other stuff that I had that I utilized, just like I use Google Scholar to find information, find cases. This is when this became available. Before that, I spent endless hours or countless hours inside of the law library. In fact, I may try to see if Mr. Bill and the ladies of the law library who helped me learn how to utilize the library will come on and maybe do a podcast or so with me, so that people can know how to go to your local law libraries in whatever city and state you live in and begin this journey, because you're dealing with professionals. So if you don't take a professional approach, if you find a law school that may allow you to sit in the back and what they used to call not monitor a class, but you could sit in the back of a class and you're not a student, but you could just kind of watch it and pick up a couple of things to see if maybe this is something you want to do. But this is not for the intellectually lazy at all. You're going to lose badly. And anybody who sold you a story that you can do this without putting in work, they're doing you a disservice. And you don't have to take Greg's word. I can promise you that more times than not, when you walk in that courtroom, you're going to come out feeling dejected. And many of these people, Maestro, may actually be so dejected that they don't look for anybody else to help them, to include even an attorney, because you may have put yourself in a situation. You may just be overly embarrassed. What I'm telling you is, I had my behind whipped a lot before I became okay with what I do. And I'll say modestly okay, whereas in actuality, I'm a very good self-represented litigant, which I wouldn't even do this if I could find attorneys to just take the cases for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. As we talked about it last time, it ain't cheap to hire an attorney, you know.
So I'm learning.
So if that's
but it's also expensive to learn a hard lesson when it comes to the things that affect your life, your day-to-day existence. So just, I'm putting it out there. I'm always honest and candid because I don't know enough of you all to lie to you, and I'll never like you enough to lie to you. So
you're going to pay up front, you're going to pay on the front end, the back end, you're going to pay, in some way, whether you pay with time, effort, and energy, or you pay with the almighty dollar. It's something's going to cost you. And that's just one of those realistic things that I think a lot of people don't understand, or they don't want to come to terms with it. That's why I tell you, if you're not able to afford $20 a month for one of these AI platforms, one of their subscription plans, and you also don't want to hire a lawyer, you might as well just let them default you. Might as well just let them do whatever they're going to do, because there ain't
conform and be done with it. And I will say this, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's an honest assessment of a way to deal with it. But the choice is yours. But if you go in there with some of this foolishness that I've seen from some of the so-called gurus or experts, especially if you don't vet them, you're going to lose.
Yeah, you can even lose if you vet them. I mean, there is no promise, there is no guarantee. That's the one thing that I've learned is you can have a great, and that's what we are talking about today in terms of legal arguments and facts, because they're two different things. And you can have all the facts, lined up, but if you don't have those legal arguments that support your position, they're gonna do all their what they can do to wipe them facts away, to either throw it under the rug, or use it against you, use the facts that you bring to the table, use your own facts against you. You got to have the right legal arguments, and that's something I've had to learn the hard way, but I am learning. They are creating a monster, and it's something that me and Greg had already talked about in terms of losing. It's losses. It's if they say you're going to fail forward. You're going to fail. Like you're going to take some losses, The point is what you do with those losses and how you use those to fuel you. So that's one thing that I always do when I get those transcripts from any of the proceedings or the hearing. I take those transcripts and I put it into AI and I ask the AI, how can we do better? What did I ask it? What did I do wrong? What could I have said better? What argument can I have made that I did not make? Instead of beating myself over the head about it, okay, let's just learn from it. Because as I just came to the conclusion, and this is another terminology, I didn't just come to this conclusion, but I always say there is no profit without conflict. And I like that when I had talked about that with ChatGPT, it completely agreed and it put it in another way. It said, was a peace and quick resolution starves the institution. And I 100% believe that, without you giving them anything to go off of, it's really hard for the court systems to do anything. They don't make money just by sitting there. They make money off of activity. So they make money if there's no activity, it ain't no money. So it's just one thing. That's why I said, if you're not going to go in there, with the right support system, with the right tools, with the right legal arguments, I wasn't trying to be an asshole or be facetious. I said, just default. But hey, if you're going to go in there knowing you're going to take an L, you're not going to try to learn from that L. You're doing exactly what they want because they going to make money off of you regardless. Like they going to make money off you regardless. So that's one thing that I've had to learn: legal arguments versus facts. And Greg actually helped me turn in. Now this is the funny part too. I do this on purpose. Maybe a little petty, but I turn in my filings at the deadline if I need to. If I got to tweak it up, make sure everything is good I'll turn in at the last minute by midnight. And Greg helped me a lot clean up some of my motion, a recent motion, and it had a lot of facts in it. And Greg cut it in half, helped me cut it in half. And the good thing is those facts I kept in my affidavit, right? I kept the facts in the affidavit, but when it came to the legal argument, Greg was really good at just saying, what is the focus? What do you want? What is the focus? Yeah, you want to hold them accountable, but win today. You know what I'm saying? You can do things tomorrow, but just win today. And as much as I wanted to, I just wanted to get angry as a father and get emotional. I was like, all right, nope, come in my mouth. Greg is here for a reason. This is why he does what he does, and I appreciate him for that. Any thoughts on that? I think you're muted.
No, what I'll say is I give you what was taught to me when I worked at a law firm and also by other attorneys. I tell a story when I was working on my appellate brief in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals that's the federal circuit. Prior to my Supreme Court brief, I was running around trying to find an attorney, man. Anybody who could possibly help me. Hopefully it won't be something. I know that it's going to be hard to get an appellate attorney because you're talking about crazy money, as we know. Crazy money. One attorney actually called me back and he told me what I told you. Keep it short. Get what you need to get so that you can get to the next thing. He said he'd been an appellate attorney for 20-something years. And what I've learned also is every attorney that's a trial court attorney may not be an appellate court attorney, no matter what the level is. So always keep that in mind. But he told me keep it narrow, and that's what I told you. I think I said it seems a little bit beefy.
You did.
if it were, there's things that I don't think are necessary right now. We all want to get in our shots. I gotta let them know what I'm thinking.
I think you muted again.
I don't know.
There you go.
You may not need to let them know everything you're thinking. Sometimes it's just best to put what's needed to be put on paper, and I learned it the hard way. It's not legal advice; it's just what I saw, just looking at it. And ultimately, the people have to make their own decision. I just try to help you focus because that's what we're all in here as parties of the same group, trying to make each other better. I would never want anybody to think I'm a guru or I'm not your way to salvation. I'm not the way to hope and the light. That's not me. Okay, I'm just a guy who has a story to tell, and I can share my story. I have no problem sharing my story with people to help them hopefully gain whatever it is that they're looking to gain. And as much as I know we may want to do other things along the way or say other things along the way, at the end of the day, it's about getting whatever relief you're seeking. That's what I learned.
Now, based on your learnings, just to kind of start off a little bit into the topic, what would you say one of the what would you say when you first started your journey when it came to sharing the facts? What would you say that was a mistake that you made back then? Now that you know,
You mean as far as sharing, like know better about what I'm doing, or just as far as being like a teacher or a coach?
I would say leading with the facts only with the court. How about that? Not just
Oh,
leading with the facts.
we don't know. I had success before I became a better teacher. That makes sense to you. So what I did was I worked the success angle from this is what happened, and I was trying to explain how I was viewing things. I think a lot of my stuff in the beginning, in fact, I know a lot of stuff I wrote in the beginning. I would tell everybody right now, look at that stuff, damn, that's horrible. And I also had attorneys tell me, damn, that's horrible, or you know, it's garbage. Some
Hold up.
others would tell me that this is something you could do a little bit better. This is why this is bad. This is why this won't work. I don't believe I had a bad presentation. My writing was not as good as my presentation because my presentation was was more narrow, and I got a lot of that because I had been a union steward, so I knew what I was here to address.
Mm-hmm.
I have a bunch of law books, as people may not know, but I took some law classes in college, so I didn't take them in law school, so it's different. So I had a basic understanding of the law, and then the presentation part I kind of learned. And I spent a lot of hours. I don't know if I ever talked about it on our platform. I spent a lot of hours in courtrooms just watching proceedings, not just the preliminary style proceedings. I sat through a lot of trials also before I became more involved in helping a couple of attorneys do some stuff. I used to sit back and just watch trial proceedings at the federal level and the state level. So I had the time. I dedicated time to it that a lot of people may not have because their schedule may not permit it. And I tell people, I had a great support system, but I was also committed to getting a certain kind of relief. And so I put in the time, and that's how I ended up getting there.
Yeah, I think that scheduling the time part is a big part of it. You know, a lot of people don't have the time, but unfortunately, it's something that's why we often say you got to get a lawyer if you don't have the time because somebody's got to put in time when it comes to all this litigation stuff. And based on like I said before, a lot of your story, you had a big support system. You still have a support system, and I think it helps for those who understand that's if you don't have a support system, you're gonna have to work even harder because you have to motivate you, you have to influence you, you have to inspire you. And if we're talking about facts and we're talking about evidence, you learning how those things work in the court system is going to do you wonders, in terms of your litigation strategy. I always tell people that strategy is a huge thing when it comes to this. I had to learn that. I had to learn that the lawyers are they're strategic. This system is strategic. None of this was by accident. That's why it's called system design. This institution was designed. It's hard for people to picture or understand that terminology when it comes to the system. You're like, wait, hold on. You mean that an architect, no, that's not about design. There's many different things that get designed, and this system was definitely designed in order to do what it does right now. So you learning how to learn the rules of evidence, that's a huge thing right there. Because when it comes to admitting testimony and admitting, evidence and admitting things, if you don't do it the right way, they could keep it from getting on the record. That's what objections are about. So it's just something that I think is very important because facts are very important. They are very, very important. But unfortunately, it's not going to get you your relief that you seek. And that's why I said what I said before, that Greg really helped me with this motion. And I'm glad that I asked him because these days I normally don't want to bother him about a lot of this stuff because I know he got things to do, people to see, places to go. He be out and about. And I know I have my own AI assistants as well, too. So he ain't the only one that's using AI assistants or partners, as he calls it. But we just so happen to be talking. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just, if you don't ask, you don't receive. And I just asked. I said, "Hey, would you mind helping me out on this?" And I'm really glad I did, because I know if I would have sent it the way it was, it was even Claude and ChatGPT said that you like Greg helped you from giving them a scapegoat, and I didn't understand that. Like I didn't understand that. Although I had all the facts, I had legal arguments. I'm citing case law. I got all this stuff, but because the way I had it structured, I was giving them a way to escape out of it. And I didn't even understand that, like because my mind don't work like that in real life. I'm thinking the more facts you come with, the more evidence you come with, the more a person should hear your point. That's not how this thing works. That's not how this thing works at all.
My experiences haven't shown me that it works that way. Well, I have faith in the structure. I don't know if you see the system, and that frustrates Maestro. I hold people to what's on paper, and I want to hold them to that. And if you watch any of the videos or you listen to any of the audios from my court proceedings, I don't move very much, do I, Maestro? I think people may get caught in the drama, but my points don't shift very much because I've set it up. I understand what the issues are. I understand how to preserve my record in the event of appeal, and I've done 3 oral arguments, but I filed. We looked on there. We don't know how many appeals there have been. So I appreciate it. Oh, Macadamia, appreciate the super chat. So Macadamia. In fact, Macadamia. Oh, I see the young man with Macadamia. What's going on, man? Say something in the chat. He sat in with me a couple of times and done some stuff, and he's another person who maybe when we do the podcast, and we know what he looks like now. He sure don't like his voice, but his voice don't match him. But I think Macadamia is a prime example of places. That's to you. It's actually to you. I think he might got you.
Well, I would say a prime example, just to keep it real simple, is he cut it in half. I think I had 45 lines, and he helped turn it to about 20 something. I think that was one of the biggest things, because I thought that I needed to have every single point that I wanted to make to the court to hold them accountable, because I want them to admit not only that they did wrong, but I wanted them to correct that wrongdoing. And Greg was basically like, listen, they're not going to do that right now. You can do that later. Right now, your main thing is you need to, because it's a motion to set aside. So your main thing is you want them to set aside the order, right? Don't, because setting aside the order is not the same thing as them curing the record. Like that's a different perspective, and I had to learn that. And so based on him, cutting it in half. I know it sounds simple, but I like to simplify it. See, Greg knows all the legal jargon and terms. He gonna make it more complex. That ain't me. I can't do that. I'm not trying to be no. I know Greg wants another him. I'm like, it ain't no mini me. Okay, I will call him mini me. This ain't Austin Powers.
I think all you all can be better than me. I think that young people are you're more adapt with all this technology. I think what I try to say is I understand how evolution works, and that's why dinosaurs are dinosaurs. That's why that stuff is. Well, the world that existed 30 years ago doesn't exist today. It's supposed to move forward, despite what apparently a lot of the administrations, particularly in the South, seem to want people to be stagnant academically and intellectually. It's almost like they want us to be regressive. I just understand that I think that you guys can be better than me. You're equipped with better tools. Information is at your fingertips. And I don't think I'm smarter than anybody. Maybe more. I'm sure I'm more experienced in some of this. I'm not as good as a good lawyer because they do this more often. What was it? The thing said I have a unique amount of experience in other areas than what people just saw me on YouTube, thinking I stepped into the child support first. I may have stepped into the child support largest, but I had traffic tickets before this. I first had a criminal case after the child support stuff. I went through that with the criminal traffic, and then it just kind of grew. Now I have auto negligence cases, which I'll talk about on my podcast. I have a criminal perjury case, which has made itself all the way to the United States Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court doesn't give me certiorari, I will refile the case in state court because I know that that's been told from the moment I filed the case in federal court. So it's not going to end. I have several appeals that were, I had an appeal granted. I had several that were PCA, which is procurement firm, that went what I would call a conflict PCA. Yeah, I could take them all to the Supreme Court, but some things you have to pick and choose your battle. And I have other things I want to do, and I'm actively involved in 4 litigations now.
See, I like that you just said what you just said, to pick and choose your battle, because that's the main point, Anthony. If anything, that's the main point I was looking to make. With your other question was he helped me pick and choose my battle. See, we don't understand. A lot of time we add in a lot of battles in these filings. You know, too many you got to pick and choose it because it's a war. You know, then we at war right now, and this is a war. And so that's why I call it a war of attrition. You know, they want to wear you down. What does Steve Urkel used to say to Laura? I'm gonna wear you down, baby. I'm gonna wear you down. You know, they want to wear you down. So when it comes to you know, his help formatting, I would say it helps a lot. And the reason why it's important is because when you use, especially when you use AI, the AI, again, it's going off of its training, and even though it has access to the internet and it can look at the internet, the formatting could be a little different, right? And I personally would rather use, and this is just me, this is my viewpoint. You can take it for a grain of salt. Like I always say, I don't represent Greg. He don't represent me. Anything I say does not have anything to do with his opinion. I rather learn from a father. Yeah, I'm gonna keep it all the way funky with y'all. Like I had to come to that epiphany moment the other day, because the 3 like channels that helped me, and Greg was 1 out of the 3. All these guys were fathers, you know, and I intentionally wanted that way. I wanted to learn from fathers that were from a Caucasian culture, Black culture. I want to learn fathers that were fighting child support only. I want to learn from fathers that were fighting for custody and child support. I like to do a plethora, a mixture of things. And Greg was a part of my mix, you know, of the things. And his formatting for how he structures his filings and his motion, I would rather go off of his stuff than what the AI tells me, because he has actual wins and winnings. And I know that Greg always talks about, you know, the lawyer aspect of things, but I'll keep it all the way real. I would go with Greg as far as you know, information, him sharing information and his perspective. I would rather go with him than a lawyer. And this is my perspective, because he's a father. Like, and you know, like there's a big difference between fighting for me fighting with the law behind you and you passing the bar and you know how that go. You don't have the same perspective, in my opinion, when you are a father. And that was for me. That ain't gonna work for everybody. That's not gonna work for everybody. But for me, it was very important because I'm a fighting father, you know. And so for Greg, he was somebody, in my opinion, that was incremental. I guess that's not some word, but he was like very important for me to meet him at this point in my life, because even though I have the AI tools, and I'm talking about they are good and I use them very well. Like they probably can't stand me because I'm using them so much. They haven't called me out on using them yet. But having somebody like Greg actually look over emotion, give his perspective, and me and Greg had this conversation the other day, because when I give him my perspective, like this podcast stuff that he's getting, this journey he's getting ready to get into, Claude could have told him what to use. ChatGPT could have told him what to use, but Claude don't hit you up out the blue and say, "Hey, I think you should do this." Claude don't hit you out the blue and say, "I've used this platform before. You might want to look into this one or an alternative." Claude's going to go off the internet and do all this thing. So I think that human connection, human opinions, human perspective is going to be more important than ever, because the information is out there. The tools are out there.
I think what you're breaking down, that maybe what I could bring is context that the AI you had to give to. I'll say this. I use AI the way Tony Stark used Jarvis. So I had to develop a relationship with the AI. And it makes plenty of mistakes, which naturally, because it doesn't have the background or the in-case experience I have. Plus, I don't have to go back and research anything to know what happened in my life. You know, it's here. It's on deck. So I use it that way. And I correct it. I build it. I build its memory. I know how to do handoffs. I know how to help them incorporate with other AI. AI is my assistant. AI helps Greg have a Greg, you know, Greg assistant. And like many bosses, I'm sure, or many, I don't say bosses, many leaders may have subordinates. They have to come sometimes say, "Hey, you're doing messed up job get better. Another person I want to bring on is Kyle McDowell, because he has a book called It Begins with We, and he didn't ask me to shout it out, but I tell everybody you can find Kyle McDowell. Look up his book. It Begins with We. It gives you a lot of strategies for being effective in a leadership capacity. He played flag football with me. We used to drag them, but I wanted him to play with me, but the guys opted against it. But he's a smart guy, good guy, and you can actually see him on one of the Chop Shop segments where he speaks about what he does. So I try to incorporate a lot of my life's experience in military, having a military father who attained a high rank, mother who was an instructor. Bro, my brother's a professor. I don't really ask him very much. He sucked most of the time. Plus, he won flag football or fantasy football league last year. I'm not over that yet. But having people around you who are great coaching staff from high school, people I can still call on, good peer group, it helps with all of this. And I try to share what I learned from everybody. I don't care if they're 5 or 55 or 75, 105. If I can learn from them, I would try to get what I can get from them and share it with people.
That's
I want to see everybody win. I want to see everybody win.
And to that point, going back to the whole topic, the factual information that you want to have in your filings and just on your position, you want to make sure that you are on point, because the AI, as he just said, can lie. The AI can hallucinate. It makes mistakes. It's not perfect. I will say that it's a lot better.
The lie. I think it hallucinates, because lie. I think sometimes lie is intentional. I think AI just does what AI does. I don't think it's conscious of whether it's leading you astray. It's just giving you.
How are you gonna say that when you be calling Claude he all the time? You be like, "Hey, he did that." I'm like, "It even is a it." But I know what you mean.
I call Claude MF a lot too.
You do, because I cuss it out.
I use a speech apparatus and I'll say some pretty rough things to him. Hey, get your head out of your whatever. What are you doing? Then I go over to open. What's it? What's the other one? Open. What's ChatGPT?
You said what?
What's ChatGPT? It's not Anthropic. Anthropic is Claude.
Open AI.
Open AI. Cuss them out. Say don't be like him, and then you get to where you want to. But at the same time, the research is still me. So I do the research. I read the case law, and we've had differences in how the case law is read. And he'll come back and say, "Oh, Greg, you're right. You're right." Yeah, dude, I know I'm right. I can read. Jackass. And then we just keep going. We make up, and then commit this to memory. Commit that. Utilize these tools, and also I do pay for the high versions of this stuff, which is why. So people, you call me and want assistance, I have no problem helping, but consider the help I give you comes from the help I pay for.
Yeah.
Otherwise, tell them what you told us last week that nobody knew about. Comes from the no tiers. I mean the TIER versus the high paying tiers. Free versus what you pay for.
Well, you were talking about basically the whole, if you don't pay for it, you are the product angle for them, and then in the privacy controls aspect too. So some of the AI tools, if you don't pay for the subscription, you are subject to them training their AI model on your information. So paying for it does a lot of things. But I'll tell you this is what I normally tell it right here.
You ain't got to lie, Craig. You ain't got to lie.
I let it know it ain't got to lie, because
you don't know.
It's one thing. It's one thing, that the AI, it makes mistakes. It's a tool. It makes mistakes, as we already said. But at the same time, sometimes I personally want to talk to it like a human being. It makes it a lot easier for me to not feel like I'm robotic or it's robotic. Even though I know it's a robot, it's a program. I get that point, but it helps me in the terms of litigation. That's why I argue with it, because I like to argue with it, because if I can catch it slipping, You know, that doesn't mean that when I get in court, I'm not going to get caught slipping. It doesn't mean I'm going to catch them slipping. And it doesn't mean I'm going to win. It just, as Greg said in the beginning, it gives you confidence. You need confidence. You're not going to win anything if you don't have no confidence. So let's just cut that out the way right now. You got to have some confidence. You're going to feel nervous. It's okay to feel nervous. It's okay to get butterflies. But if you can practice with the AI tools, and it will say things because the AI has its own bias. It'll say things and it'll look at the laws and the rules and look at the rules and the laws and case law and come to its conclusion. But I'm telling you, I have walked it down its own thought process and conclusion multiple times. Why? Because I ask it a question. When it tells me this, I say, okay, well, is the sky blue? You know, and it's one of the things that I came to another conclusion, fundamentally speaking, when I was in my custody battle, and I'm in the appeals right now. But when I was in the actual hearing and I was trying to get evidence admitted, the magistrate kept asking what the foundation was. That was one of my biggest. If I would have had the foundation understanding back then, I would have whooped their ass because that kept them from, because I had evidence on top of evidence on top. I had 60 pieces of evidence. I had 60 things to look at. I only got to admit like 12 to 15. And I was pissed. And it was because I didn't understand how to lay foundation. That's not the same way now. So now that same laying foundation, I do that with the AI. I'll ask this question, then ask this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, and we'll keep going back and forth to eventually it'll go, oh, what, you know what? Now that we're here, we started at point A, now we're at O or P or whatever the case is. I go, now do you think the same thing you thought before when you first came to that conclusion? And if it says no, that let me know I learned something. I laid foundation. I was able to start from a beginning, and then we can get to the end of the story. But it's hard to, to do what you're doing if you ain't practicing. I like to do a lot of practice with AI.
You're not going to do well at all if you don't practice. You can't be like AI talking about practice. You have to be wanting to put in the time, effort, and energy.
Yeah, and that's huge. And it will get that's the thing too, that the better the model. That's why I always tell people to use the best model you can use, not on the highest effort level, but use the best model, because especially when you're using it to help you draft your stuff, you don't want it to get the facts wrong. That's the last thing that's an easy out for them. If you get the facts wrong, you can have 10 things right, and all it takes is for you to have one thing wrong, and they can use that one thing, and that be the one thing that gets your whole stuff messed up. That's why I said when Greg looked at my my stuff, that it wasn't necessarily because he don't have the facts. He don't know like I didn't send him the transcripts. I didn't send him the notices. And I had thought about that. I'm like, there's no point. Like I know the facts. What I need help with is the format. And there's a difference between the format and the facts, picking and choosing your battle and the legal arguments. And even though I had the facts on my affidavit, which I ended up turning in, that has the facts, and what Greg taught me too, and the AI agreed too, just because I didn't add all that information on my motion does not mean that it's just out the window. No, that's on the record, right? And so I had to learn strategically, and this was a huge strategy point for me. I can't speak for nobody else, but for me, this was a huge strategy point. That's what the affidavit, for most part, is for. You are tested on my behalf. I, Maestro Stevens, believe this, or at this time, that's not what my motion to set aside was for. So it can have some facts in there, but the legal arguments is what Greg really helped shape in terms of just making it, as he said, narrow it down. And then I even went back to the AI and I argued with the AI about what Greg said. I did. I ain't gonna lie. Me and the AI got in a fight. We got in a virtual fight over what Greg did. And we both understood why Greg did what he did. And then it made sense to both of us. I'm for real, y'all. It may sound petty, but we got in a virtual fight. You know what I'm saying? I punched the motherfucker in the face and said, well, why he left this out? And are you sure if he leaves this out that they might not hear this because they let her throw stuff out? And the AI was like, whoa, slow down, hold on. You still have your affidavit. You know what I'm saying? You still have what you said with the facts were. And I thought that was interesting. What are your thoughts on that? Because I didn't tell you that part.
Well, I didn't know it, so I can't comment on it. I think it's kind of funny. Again, I tell people, I don't think I'm not the end all and be all. I just share my experience. I look at a document, I say, well, because a lot of people's experiences are close to mine, but they're never going to be the same. So there's no one size fit all to anything. Yet if I see something and I can identify it, which is what they call issue spotting, and I only looked at what you said you wanted in the beginning, and then I looked at all that stuff in the middle, and I just surmise that, well, you want this, you need this possibly to get what you want, but you're talking about all this. That's what you really want. You want at the end. You want this at the beginning to give you what you're going to ask for at the end. Talking about the guy's socks, his family, his favorite shoes, that's not going to get you where you want to go.
Right.
And I think in your case, it's something I believe is simple as just what did the rule require?
Right.
Kind of like if you watch mine, what? I talked about a lot of things that didn't know how to do to say, hey, bro, you ain't got to complain. We stayed here for 20, I stayed here for 27 years because I had to get everything told for a long time. And when I sat down and dissected and deconstructed the entire case, instead of me starting where I was at the end, I just said, let me do what I'm supposed to do. Go to the beginning and build up, not from the end and build and go backwards. And when I went to the beginning, I said, the most simple thing, you don't have a complaint. 27 years of frustration. But I had no problem sharing it. And I'm not going to turn into anything special. But we know one thing is 99.9% of the cases won't have my set of facts. You're more likely to be able to find some resolution or some relief in some other procedural error that may open up, that becomes a defect somewhere else that may allow you some sort of relief. Even like I said, if it goes from 800 a month down to 100 a month. If there is some missing document, the things that are most tangible. And again, I don't think people need me for that. I'm saying if you need me for that, then treat me like something you need. Whereas I think there's plenty enough information out here to get you where you want to go. What are you willing to do to be able to travel that road toward what you want? And at the end of the day, keep in mind, it ain't Gret's problem.
Yeah.
It never will be. It's not your attorney's problem. It never will be. It's your situation for you to handle as you move forward. So you have to make those determinations.
What is? Can you explain the difference between facts and legal arguments?
Well, I don't know if I want to say it without getting into legal advice. That's not legal advice. Facts are just what you can point to that is easily provable. What's on the document is a fact. Maybe the information on the document that's in the document may not be factually accurate, but a document containing Maestro 6'3" is a fact. Is it a fact that Maestro is 6'3"? That's a different issue. Now, the legal argument would be, how do you prove, or a legal argument, depends what your legal argument is. Your legal argument is that Maestro is 6'3". If I look at him and say he's 4'11", my legal argument is we can get ruler or some sort of measurement apparatus and test it. So what is the legal argument? What would I need to know, or what is the elements to prove? What elements are needed to prove that Maestro is 6 feet 3 inches? One place you could possibly start is whatever the jury instructions are. If you look at it as a crime, if being 4'11" is a crime, we'll find out what the elements of that crime are. And if all the elements aren't there, if it's a crime to be less than 5 feet, what you want to do is be able to show that the elements are there to prove that he's not 5 feet. Otherwise, whatever the charge is for being under 5 feet would not fit. Whoever makes a statement he or she does not believe to be true under oath in an official proceeding commits perjury. Okay, so if each one of those things are not there, it can't be the perjury charge under 837.02 under Florida law. Same thing with anything else. What are the rules? What's the rules? What does it state that is needed? And find case law to support your position. Find case law that's most likely consistent with your set of facts, and that the outcome is the outcome that you're seeking in your situation. And don't look for what you want in the case. Like you say, sometimes your facts aren't good enough. Well, sometimes your facts don't align with what the law claim has defined as what's necessary to prove whatever it is or disprove whatever it is you're going.
I like that explanation, and it's just it can be as simple as just understanding that the dates, the times, are very important. Those are facts. That nobody can people can make it up, but those are supposed to be factual things, right? When you were noticed, what is your case number? Like that's a fact, like what your case number is, right? I can't just make that up, right? So those are things, but that's not the same thing as arguing, or in any type of way. So being able to understand that the information is one thing that you're sharing, but applying it or how does it apply to the rule? Iraq, as Greg always says, the issue, the rule, the application, and conclusion, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and that's
analysis of the issue against the rule to get you to conclusion. So how does whatever your issue is, how do the rules apply to what your issue is? Well, in fact, most people don't even know what their issue is. I want to get off of child support. Well, yeah, but what's the issue?
Right. Your want ain't enough.
She won't let me see my child. Okay, so what's the issue?
Right.
Is the issue you don't have a time sharing agreement.
Right.
And then from state to state it can change, the issue is I want to get off child support. Okay, well, why are you on child support might be the first thing.
Right.
What did the state do or not do in your action or in your case? And that's when there's nuance in whatever's going on. And you make it from there. I don't make any moral determinations or assertions. I don't really give a damn. I don't care one way or the other.
It's real. I mean, and that's something that folks must understand. You must understand every state, every jurisdiction has its own, laws and how those laws are applied. And learning that is going to help if you can connect that with what your issue is and what you believe the facts are. That's something that I think is a lot of people don't often do that. They get mad, they get angry, they want to plead their case and they want to be able to share, what they believe is the truth and how they feel. But the systems don't work like that. Systems don't work like that at all. That's the reason why we have laws. That's the reason why we have rules. That's the reason why that we have evidence. That's the reason why we have procedure, right? In my state, excuse me, in my state, we have the rules of civil procedure. We have the rules of juvenile procedure. We have the rules of the court. There are a lot. And I'm not saying that, anybody has to memorize everything, but you definitely want to have some awareness on what they are, especially if you're going to be filing on your own behalf. If you're hiring a lawyer, I still think you should know about this information because lawyers get things wrong as well too. They're human beings. They're not perfect. I remember arguing a lot with my lawyer. That was a big point of contention in my case when I hired two lawyers, and both lawyers I ended up arguing with. And it taught me a huge lesson because guess what? I'm arguing with these lawyers on my own case and they're still getting paid. Like they're still getting paid. I'm money's draining out my bank account. They're still getting paid. And I'm just like, why am you're supposed to be representing me? You're supposed to be arguing on my behalf and I'm arguing with you. And so, it was something that let me know I have to learn. I got to learn. And I think that was something that, and this is, another topic for another day, but I do believe that sometimes you can intimidate, some of the representation that you might be dealing with, because at the end of the day, that's how they get fed. That's how they put their kids through college, right? By the information that they know and how they do their thing. So if you come with your perspective and you come with the facts and you come with the law and stuff like that, and that's not necessarily how they like to do things, because every lawyer is different, just like everybody in every position and every job is different. Same job, different person. You never know. You might be intimidating some people. So I believe I intimidated my lawyers. I don't think that they like that. I think they want to be the LeBron James, shut up and dribble. And I'm like, I'm not doing that.
No experience in that area.
See, this is why Greg needs me. He has to talk. He has to talk vicariously through a fellow like me, right? That's why this is important for us to do this stuff. Because I know if y'all been watching Greg for a long time, he stay real far away from certain things for specific reasons. But a fellow like me, I ain't Greg. I ain't trying to be Greg. I don't want to be Greg. Okay, I got other things to do. I got other places to be. I'm gonna speak as they say the modern day. I'm gonna speak my truth, right? I'm gonna speak my truth, and my truth is that's what happened.
I just don't have that experience. I don't know how do I say this. Not sound flippant. I don't have a situation where I had I gotta be careful with that now. When it came to child support specifically, I never had an attorney for representation. When it came to other matters, I've had attorneys and I've not had attorneys. So that's kind of like a double shot. The thing I tell people is either when you make your decision, be willing to live with that decision. I don't care what decision you make. When it's all said and done, you have to be able to do this like in basketball. Hey, it fouls on me, or hey, I made it happen. I wasn't trying to prove a point. I was trying to win a case. And I don't care how I win it. I don't care if we win it because I've made 3 people miss and find the end zone, or if a person faked like they're going to get a ball to me, gave it to somebody else, and they score. At the end of the day, I just want the ugly shirt with the thing that says you won on it, and I'm going home. That's what it's about.
And to this message right here, this is one of those things. I think it's OL 3055. Yeah, and we talked about that earlier. If you're listening and I've never heard the second part that you mentioned, but I can't disagree with it. I don't know. I don't know because I use the paid tier, but I can imagine. I can imagine that. Now you're saying that it malfunctions. That's a interesting word, to use because it malfunction. If we're gonna use malfunction, it messes up even on the paid stuff. Like Greg said, and I said, like we pay for this stuff. He pays for the bigger tier. You know what I'm saying? I listen. I ain't giving them all that money. I ain't got money to blow all like that. Okay, but when it comes to using these tools, they're gonna malfunction on any level. It doesn't matter what you use. It's gonna mess up. It's going to make mistakes, and that's why we always urge you to read, and review whatever it is that you're using. And I think that that's also a healthy discipline for you to do, especially if you're going to represent yourself, just in life in general, right? Read and reviewing things. That's a good skill set to have, just in life in general. But in terms of litigation stuff, you need that skill set. It ain't about no good skill set to have. That's a necessity. You gotta have that skill set. Because you never know what the AI is going to say or how it's going to. And this is the crazy part too. That's why I like to draft my motions and draft my filings early before I end up filing them. So I'll draft them a week before, a month before. I mean, literally, to me, it's like putting bullets in the chamber. Like that's how I look at it. Like Greg may be a little nicer. I'm going to war with these people. By the time I'm done with this, I'm listen. I want them to know they fucked up. Like what my sound effect? I want them to know, like, hey. You messed up so bad.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
I want them to feel that way. It was at this moment that they knew they fucked up. When they started messing with me and they didn't know or had any idea I was gonna link up with Greg. Listen, they messed up even more by even letting me link up with Greg. And no, it's not like they literally let me link up with Greg, but by pissing me off, creating this monster, I look for another monster. Because I don't listen, you mess with me and my baby. That's why I said me and Greg have different stories. His story was child support when it came to family court. My story is different. My story is custody. I'm a father who wants to be in my daughter's life. I was at the pre-birth activities. I was at the birth activities. I was at the post-birth activities, and me and the mother were not together. We were not dating. We weren't together. None of that. I was participating on everything, and they still pulled this jive turkey shit. So yes, that pisses me off. Now, do I carry that, in the courtroom and act all emotional? No. But we on YouTube right now. We're on a platform. We're on a channel. I could be a little bit emotional because I'm fighting for my baby girl. She's only 4 years old. And this is 100%. I believe this. If I'm not in her life, she's going to be on OnlyFans in 20 years. I ain't got time for that. Like, I don't want my daughter on OnlyFans for 20 years. So my passion and my position comes from a different perspective. And that's the reason why I come at it the way I come at it. Do I want to win? Like Greg said, yes. Do I have to learn? And that's also why I believe God put Greg in my life, because he helps me stay centered. He helps me stay focused, right? So I don't get overly emotional. But at the same time, it's the emotion that carries me forward, because I showed them the facts. I've showed them so many facts so many times. I've made legal arguments. And this is a conclusion I had to come to understand. When Greg got his win after 27 years, I said, and Greg might disagree with me, but I put it like this: they can keep doing whatever they want to keep doing to you. It takes somebody to finally say, you know what? All right, let's give him what he wants. Because they can find a way every time to move the goalposts, y'all. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with other cases. Like Greg said, he watched cases. We can't do that in my jurisdiction. In juvenile court, we're not allowed to walk into juvenile cases. So what is the best thing I could do? Watch YouTube cases. And I've seen them move the goalposts multiple times. So you just have to be careful, because if they want to keep effing you over, you know what I'm saying? If they want to keep that Vaseline, ice cube, no Vaseline, and what is it, common, they can keep the no Vaseline on you for a very, very long. It takes somebody to finally say, you know what? Give them what, let them go. I mean, am I lying, Greg? Because what, are they not allowed to keep doing whatever they want to do?
Well,
Or do they have to do what you want them to do?
well, they never have to do anything.
That's my point. They don't have to do nothing.
I think that depending on the circumstance, we've had guys that have done pretty well other places, and they'll come in and they'll give their story. It's just whatever the facts on what are the ways of holding judges CC accountable. The JQC, but before you could, the thing the judges have was called absolute immunity, even if they've done something that's malicious. So always keep that in mind. Soon the judge is very difficult. As I'm learning, if you go to my Supreme Court case 26 was 5074, you'll see my Supreme Court case and just read the case. Unless they've done something that's extrajudicial, meaning they had no jurisdiction at all, and I'm arguing that case in mine. But I think before we worry about the judge, let's make sure that we've done everything we're supposed to do, so that when we make the accusation that the judge is done, the judge is, who cares about the judge? Focus on whether or not the judge's ruling was proper as it relates to you. That's what I would do. But again, I seek with an attorney, but I didn't care who the judge was. I cared about what the ruling was. I don't care who's in front of me, whether it's prime time or the ninth string cornerback on Bug Tussle High School. I'm going to work the same way. My job is to try to get over. So,
but also to your point, you had judge recuse themselves, right? Is that a fact?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying facts. This ain't legal advice. Greg, come on, let's keep it all the way funky with it. You had judges recuse. You said that on public multiple times. I didn't learn from you from private conversations. That's something that I think people need to understand, because I had to learn that too. The difference between disqualification and recusal. Like, this is stuff like I reverse engineer Greg, for real. I reverse engineer a lot of shit. A lot more than he think he even knows. He has no clue. Now, sometimes there's a lot of stuff that he be sending or he shares with the members and stuff. I be like, yo, that's over my head. Like, yo, I can't. I'm a tech nerd, and I'm sure I will probably blow his head up with all the information and technology stuff that I use. But when it comes to that part right there, the recusal versus the disqualification, like, there's a difference between the judge saying, you know what, I give up, versus you holding the judge accountable with the law, right? And whatever way you do it, there's two different ways of doing that. And that's not legal advice. That's just information that's out there. It's just literally, it's just how it's out there.
I've had judges recuse on their own, and I've had judges where I had to disqualify them to get them off of my case. Yes.
That's my point.
I've had hearing officers, which before it happened, there was no process or procedure for getting a hearing officer recused. And I've had 3 of them just say, 2 of them say outright recusal, and 1 say, this is above my head. After years of saying, we're just going to keep on trying to stick our finger in his ear. And then all of a sudden I started learning stuff and started taking hammers to their fingertips. Now I'm the bad guy, but it was understanding the process. It doesn't matter. Like I said, it doesn't matter who's in front of me. What matters is, what are the facts, and what are the facts entitle me to when it comes to relief? And that's what I I stand on. No, our show about judges sometimes not accepting your facts, or the hearing officer, judge, magistrate, whatever it may be. I believe in a lot of my cases, I've started to ask people, are you paying more attention to the drama or what Greg knows? And some people say, oh, it's kind of both.
Emotional damage.
I think, and I could understand if I was a person on the outside watching. If I go back and re-listen, I laugh. Because some of the things I say, they're not, of course, none of it's really scripted. It's the fact that when Greg's an asshole, and he's okay with that, but I'm also knowledgeable, and I'm a grown man, a very grown man. So I look at it like anything else. I'm competing in there. The code shifting is natural. I told you I write the same way that I speak to an extent, but I do mix legal jargon sometimes with a layman's delivery, or even a layman's delivery in my writing. But do I try my best to understand it all? Of course. I in my mind, I might be thinking "f you" when I'm listening to these people, or I just want to get in your dental work. That doesn't necessarily work. Squid, the courtroom is not the place for squid. The courtroom is for Chagrat. The squid is gonna go to jail, and that doesn't resolve anything. So I focus on as much as I can what's going to get me closer to what I want. Nothing else, and I try to take as much as I can out of the judge's hands.
And that's a lot that I've learned from you. As much as
discretionary hands. I like to put it like what you must do because this is what the rule says.
Yeah. I think that the part that was interesting was like one, seeing all the recusals that happened on your stuff. I'm like, man, that is crazy. You might want to do a show just on that by itself. But because it takes a lot. I think it takes. Listen, they not just gonna get off the case just because you don't like them. That's not how this thing works. You know what I'm saying? Like you could not like them all day. You can cuss them out. They're not gonna just get off the case because you don't like them. So there has to be things in place. And
if you don't like them, that's what I said. I've had judges I think stay on the case because they don't like me, or because they don't want. I think because they don't want to give. I'll say this, and this is a little bit outside of what I normally am. I probably have become somewhat of an issue, not because I'm the issue, but because I may inspire. And I don't know that there's been a lot of guys that have done what I've done, at least here locally. And I don't take my word for it. Go read all the transcripts, which I put in all my court cases. And speaking of transcripts, I want to say a quick love for Scott Reporting and Taisha Scott, who's an AAERT certified depositions hearing, EUOs, remote, statewide, and Florida Committee to Reducing Costs court reporting service, who without her presence, or the presence of not just her, I got to say shout out to Richard Lee Reporting, who's been bought up by Veritex. The weren't that bad. What do you mean injuries weren't that bad? I don't know. Depends what you mean by injuries weren't that bad, but her standing in the gap helped me out. Just make sure you give her a call at 954-383-4955 and tell her Greg Dahl sent you. Scott Reporting, and get the record right. But I don't. To the question, if you said the injuries weren't that bad, I don't know what weren't that bad. And I would just say, if you wanted to prove damages, if you have an attorney, your attorney should be doing that anyway. So I don't know what not that bad means. It's kind of vague.
Right.
You didn't get your arm wasn't like lacerated and it's off. Or you still have usage of it, but you can't. You have your arm still, but you can't use 3 of your 5 fingers on that hand. What's not that bad?
Maybe if they follow up, I'll put it up there. But going back to the information, or at least in my story, learning that I had to learn the hard way, because again, when you're litigating and you're doing, like, I'm in this in a couple of years, right? And when you're underneath the same judge, like I'm underneath the same judge, when you're underneath the same judge and you've been denied multiple times on multiple occasions, even though you've used the facts, remember that's what this topic is about, right? Facts are different than legal arguments. And I'm telling you, like, I feel it's so crazy at this point how good I feel when I'm done with my motions, because I know that, I'm getting better at it. And that's why I appreciate what Greg does, is because he helps me get better with these motions. But to be denied, if you guys saw so Greg, I remember Greg let me know, about some anonymous situation. This guy had like with 2016, he had like 600 entries. And I told Greg, I said, man, it's been 2.5 years. I got over 1,000 entries on that damn docket.
Oh,
And that
yeah,
just, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I'm like, when I look at something like that, I'm like, okay, that's a lot of entries, 600, but that ain't comparison to me. 1,000 entries in 2.5 years, that's excessive. And when I use that with the AI and I give that to the AI and I ask the AI, is this excessive? Is it, yes, it's possible, because, we always like to say the possibilities, but in terms of me getting denied everything every time, and I'm not given any type of thorough review. It's always the same, as they call it, boilerplate language. Upon independent review, you're denied. I never get an explanation on this or explanation on that.
You mean you don't get a written opinion? You just get
I don't get nothing. I don't get nothing. They use the same boilerplate language every time. That for me became a signal, right? And it's not necessarily the evidence, right? But it became the signal that I believe I was being targeted. Because at this point in time, to be denied everything every damn time, and even things that are not on the docket or things that are not even in the rule for them to say, I'm like, okay, how do I deal with this in a way where I can, do it the right way? And that's what I had to learn, the difference between recusing and disqualification. And that's the reason why these judges and magistrates and hearing officers have immunity. This is not legal advice. This is just the truth. There's a reason why they have immunity. Why? Because they don't want to, every time somebody disagrees with them, for you to just sue them. Like, there's a reason for that. It works like that. That's where immunity comes in. So you have to go through the legal channels, the proper way of doing things, in order to say, hey, I'm not, wanting to disqualify this person because I'm upset with the ruling. That's what the appeals is for, right? No, this is, okay, I have a certain amount of things that have happened on my case that institutionally feels like they're not doing their job. And that is something that I had to learn. And that's why, I'm going the route that I'm going. And when I get there, I'll share that later on. But like Greg said before, pick and choose your battles. And I'm not going that path just yet, because I have a battle right now for my daughter for custody, and I'm in the appeals for both custody and child support. I'm just trying to get them to enforce their own order, on the order that they wrote that I don't like. I don't like the order that they wrote, but guess what? I'm following it, and they don't want to enforce it because money's involved. But I have to pick and choose my battles, and I have to wait till this is done before I go after the institution, not the judge, not the magistrate, but the institution.
I don't see another of injury. I don't know. I didn't see another of injury. You were able to pursue it. I don't understand. AOL 3055. Your sentence is somewhat incoherent. I don't know what it is. You didn't see another of injuries, but again, if you have a case like that, I would probably just get an attorney. Because I can't speak specifically to what I don't understand.
That's a word that I heard often. So, oh my goodness, that word incoherent. That word incoherent is a word that they love to use. Incoherent. It's an interesting terminology.
Do you understand what that means?
Oh yeah, I know what it means.
No, do you know what? Do you understand?
What he's saying right now in terms of this? Mm-mm. But we got a follow up though.
Which accident case? Which lady?
And you know what? To this point, this is where, and it's funny you say AOL. I laughed in my head. I was like, that's that old school Steve Harvey, old school y'all from Cleveland, because it's OL, but the at symbol made it look like AOL. It made me think of that back in the day. But
the petition didn't mention a lot of injuries. I don't think. Which lady? And it wasn't a petition. It wouldn't be. I don't think you would file a petition for an auto negligence case. Be a complaint.
The person who hit you?
No, but it wouldn't be a petition. It would be a complaint.
Oh, okay.
Are you speaking about the one that was settled, or the ones that are settled, or the ones that are still open?
But this is a point that I would like to make, in not to pick on 3055, because I think it's OL. But I think that this is good practice, because here's the thing: if Greg can't understand it through the chat, and especially if you're going to litigate yourself, this is a good way for you to, okay, how do you articulate certain things, right? Because that word incoherent that Greg used, they will use that, even though you know what you mean, you know what you're trying to say. And as Greg said before, he uses layman terms, and he uses, the legal terms, right? Because he does the code switching thing. And I think that this is a great time for anybody watching this, anybody who's watching, because I had to learn this stuff too. When I would call Greg, or we would have, a consulting call, something like that. He would do the same thing with me. I had to explain to him in a way that was coherent. And that helped me become better, because if I can explain to Greg in a way that's coherent, that means that I have a better chance of making my point when I'm there, whether I'm talking to a lawyer, because you still want to be coherent when you're talking to a lawyer, right? They're just representing you, but you're the one who is on the line for your situation. Or if you're going to litigate yourself, you want it, because this right here is going to go to those filings, right? You can use AI all you want to use, but you represent you when it comes to them filings, right? And if you're doing it by yourself. So I just think this is a good practice, to where if you can say things in a certain way, be articulate, so that way you're not called incoherent, because I'm telling you, they called me incoherent so many times, even though I made perfect sense. I made perfect sense what I was saying. I was very logical. I was articulate. I slowed down, like Bobby Valentino. Slow down. I just want to get to know you. I slowed it down for him. All that kind of stuff. They called me incoherent. You know what I'm saying? And that pissed me off. I'm like, y'all just playing games right now. You know what I'm saying? So that this is the time, I think.
I remember in one of my hearings, and this again only applies to me. She said it was legally. I had an attorney for the Department of Revenue in the case that was recently voided, say that my document was legally insufficient. If I looked at that same document today, I'd probably think, yeah, it's a little beefy, right? But my response was, I'm not an attorney. I don't have to be legally proficient. I just had to let you know what I want. And that kind of helped. I think if the person is talking about the 2024 accident, I believe that was filed by an attorney, wasn't it? So maybe that question be best directed toward the attorney.
See, that's the lessons we learn. Yeah. But that was something I thought was interesting, that word incoherent. And the reason why that term like triggered me, not right now, but when they used it, because my case had a lot to do with, as we call, the silver bullet, or as they call it, I'm gonna say we, but they call the silver bullet, right? Accusations that aren't based on any facts or any evidence, that the burden of proof falls on you. In my case, the mother accused me of drinking alcohol. The alcohol, there was no nexus to harm to my child. There was no abuse, none of that. It was just drinking alcohol. For some reason, parents aren't allowed to drink alcohol, and it was the craziest thing. So they allowed this accusation to fuel their ability to intervene and investigate, right? And they made me take a toxicology test, a 10-panel test, meaning they tested for everything: drugs, alcohol, substance, everything. And I remember when I wrote my filing and my motion, I wrote my objection to the toxicology test. The magistrate used the word, your filing is incoherent. And that pissed me off, because I'm like, oh, this is a two-part fold scenario. She's intentionally saying this because, like Greg just said, I don't understand it. But also because, isn't that the term that we use when it comes to being under the influence? You're not coherent. You're incoherent. So it was, yep. So they were basically trying to play games with me without saying it out loud.
Context in the everyday context, sometimes we want to conflate them when they are not necessarily on polar opposites of an issue, but they may not be along the same. They may be parallel, but not on the same. And parallel and well, parallel would not be on the same line. They may be parallel, so they're not on the same line. So what you need to communicate a point to the court may be different than what you need to communicate when you're speaking to us in general. And I'm not familiar with what they're talking about. The lady who kept you, you know, it's kind of interesting when people pick and choose things. And I don't know, I'm not going to say, I don't understand what 33055 wants. It'd be nice for you to contribute to this. But if a person hit somebody and kept going, and you're saying there's not a lot of injuries, what happens if a person hits somebody and keeps going?
It's a good question. That's a good. Is that rhetorical? Were you asking the audience? Were you asking me? Because
well, I'm asking you. Look, I'm trying to figure out what, because the sentencing, the structures of the comments, again, it's hard to kind of distinguish what they're trying to get at. I have an idea, but I'd rather not speculate and them just ask a direct question, because they're kind of, instead of, I know the sentences are capped by a certain number of words. Just ask it so that we can have a definitive question, which should give me an idea as to whether or not, one, I have an answer, two, I'm going to answer, but at least if nothing else, we're clear as to why I am or am not going to answer the question. But you said there's not a lot of injuries. I don't even know what that means.
you said a good word. You just said another good word that I think the audience needs to understand: speculate. Right? That's a part of the rules of evidence and objection. You can objection, Your Honor, speculation. You know what I'm saying? So that I think that for you is so natural that to you, I don't even think it even passes in your mind. Like, it's just, you just know this talk, you just know how this work. But I think from the audience's perspective, people who never heard these terminologies, being incoherent and speculation, hearsay, lack of personal knowledge, you know, we can go on and on and on. These are things that
Cause for state of mind, you know, understand state of mind, the state somebody is.
Yeah, I think what determines a lot of injuries. Right. I mean, right. What does determine a lot of injuries? You know, is it the force? Is it the force? Is it the amount? You know, that's an interesting. I don't know nothing about the case, right? I don't know nothing about what's going on in terms of that case. But Greg, you know way more than me.
Well, I just, again, I'd rather not speculate, and I believe our resident insurance person might be better suited to. I think the question is clear. What is meant by a lot of injury? So there's not a reason for me to speak to something that's not clear. You know, there's objection, Your Honor, vague. You know, objection, Your Honor, speculative. You're saying there's not a lot of injuries. What's the basis for you making that? See what Macadamia put in there?
Let's see.
When you say injuries, and then there's injuries, like when you say injuries, like you mean physical injuries, psychological injuries. There's could be pain and suffering.
Yeah.
Keep saying petition. There's punitive damages required, which normally requires physical damages to be proven first. I think, one, you keep using the word petition, so I'm kind of wondering what that means. It wouldn't be a petition. It'd be a complaint, right? When you begin an auto negligence case, doesn't it begin with a complaint? Go to the very front. Yeah. Okay, so the complaint. The complaint doesn't mention physical injuries, which normally requires physical damages to be proven first, based upon what set of rules, what rules say you have to prove physical injuries to ask for punitive damages? Specifically, what's the rule for making a claim for punitive damages? What do you have to do to plead punitive damages in the Florida auto negligence case?
Somebody is a consultation appropriate?
No, I just they're fishing.
Oh, okay. You think so?
Well, I would speculate they're fishing because it wouldn't have taken us 35 times to get the fact that there's no petition filed.
We got to get. Is it pronounced Cersei? We got to get Cersei on. One of these times. Is that like that's your people, right? We got to.
That's Miss Vanille. That's her.
Okay. Yeah. Insurance.
As an insurance person.
Yeah. No, I'm saying I think that would be a good, a good addition. I mean, I know you got the podcast coming, but I'm just saying, for what we're doing for our platform, that would be a good guest. So I would like to have some guests on the show as well too.
I would like to bring on attorneys. In fact, again, I'm certain with the case that the 3055 is speaking to was filed by an attorney. I know the case was filed by an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, it's my case. He's mentioned it's my case. So I know who filed which cases for me.
Right. That's even crazy. You got so many. I don't know how you you got so many crazy. Listen, even my degrees got degrees. I'm conditioned, my brother. Even my conditioner's been conditioned.
Having people, you say normally courts require, when you say normally courts, based upon what do you mean normally courts? It was a part of tort reform, I believe. So there we go. So we're asking questions that we don't have a clear understanding. Well, I state this to people. One thing about my appearances, I never asked a question I didn't have the answer. We already know the answer. So we don't have to. So again, instead of putting in here what you believe, I know I said go find the rule for pleading punitive damages in a Florida auto negligence case. No, what you say normally, what courts require it? Just go pull the rule. The issue is somebody pled for punitive damages. What's the rule? To plead punitive damages. I'll just throw out a word you might want to look at what you have to proffer to plead punitive damages.
I wish I had my Kanye West and Sway sound effect. You ain't got the answers, Sway. You ain't got the answers. No, Sway. You ain't got the answers.
and I don't know because I don't know this individual. And the question, there's no physical damages exactly. I know that a person may have looked at something and from that said, let me come in here and try to figure out what's going on without just reading what was in front of them. And also reading the entire case file. And not only what's inside the case file, what information that may be considered work product for either side, what information is not currently in the case file, which may be information that is privy to only the attorney who filed it and the individual pursuing the action. I think that what the facts are that may lead to a cause of action in my case may not be necessarily what somebody would need for their case. So maybe if they want to direct questions.
They could use you could use, and that's the thing too. We talked about using the AI. You just since your stuff is out there, you can put your stuff into the AI, and it can analyze everything. And there you go.
Do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good use case.
One note for people who are watching, and we spoke about this off air. I tell people I typically didn't do this. You can tell when a person has in-court experience. It's kind of like if a person speaks football. It won't take me very long to know how much football they played.
Right.
A person not been in the Army or been in the Army, there's certain language or certain things that we're going to recognize just because of proximity. Like I may not have use the same verbiage that a person who may have been a Ranger or the Special Forces or even people in combo use different jargon than those of us who were in logistics, even if there's crossover for what we did, if you had any engagements. So when people do these things, I just have to look at. Oh,
that is hilarious. I bet.
Yeah, I try to be patient, and you can see the people. I appreciate those who have followed and supported me. they're not as patient as me. Y'all need to learn this stuff. And you know, my patience can't be questioned anymore. 27 years, right? On a 31-year-old case. But we saw it through to the end, all right?
But to that point, though, I mean, Anthony, you make a good point. Now, listen, I'm not letting them off the hook. You know, I don't let them off the hook just because of that. But it is a good point. You know, you got to imagine that when they are dealing with pro se litigants, you know, you are dealing with people who are ignorant, and ignorant doesn't mean stupid. I know, especially us, you know, this color folk, we grow up thinking that ignorant means stupid. Ignorant does not mean stupid. It means the lack of knowledge. You don't know, and when you go into these situations, you just don't know what you don't know. You know, oftentimes that's one of my favorite terms that I tell my clients, like, you don't know what you don't even know, right? So how can you even know it? If you don't even know, you don't know it. And when it comes to, you know, these situations, yeah, I do think that these judges or magistrates or these hearing officers are dealing with all types of people and all types of backgrounds, especially when they go up there thinking that they know better and they're using terminology that don't even make no sense. You know, I know Greg don't like to say it, but I'm gonna say it, that sovereign citizen stuff, right? And so when it comes to this type of stuff, you got to know that, hey, they gonna eat you like they kind of waiting for that. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I've watched, and we got to do some more reactions in the future. I've literally watched a judge. He's got glasses on. He's very animated, right? I mean, he's very animated, and he was like, "I can't wait." He was like, "I can't. Oh, I've been waiting for this all day." And it was a guy that was using the software. He was like, "Man, I've been waiting," and he started talking to people in the background like it was a TV show. He was like, "Oh, I've been waiting for this," and I'm like, "Damn, that's how some of these judges think. Like it's fun for them."
And there are people who, and I know I'll talk about a little bit of it, and I look forward to bringing on Will Crowley. If you have a chance to go to my YouTube page, look up I think it's called UCC something, Will Crowley, the credit guy. I'm so grateful for what he gave me when it came to showing his story on paper. I'm not responsible, and I have no problem giving credit where it's due for why I'm transparent. When I first came into this information about that were being circulated in groups, where there was the Moors, the so-called sovereign citizens, I was never one of them. I don't even qualify for them. But I was just trying to get information, and part of it was Will Crowley gave me his paperwork. He gave me what came from what he was doing, because he was teaching UCC and other stuff. And so he said, Greg, a lot of these, he called them Johnny come latelys, and I'm paraphrasing. He said, a lot of these guys are doing stuff that we were doing years ago. And a lot of people kept saying, this is what I do in court and what have you. We have a lot of them on YouTube now. I did this in court and I make the court shut, all this other stuff. And yet they don't show you everything. And I've always lived by what I got from Will, and he never told me to do this. I can show you what I've done, and it doesn't tell you how I did it. I don't care. I don't even want people calling me. I mean, it's nice, you know, if you make $1 to it, I don't care. The reality is I want people to have success and to be prepared and not have to go through making the mistakes that I made. Candidly, but I'm pretty good at this. I became better, not because I wanted to. I am, like they say, invention is the mother of necessity. Necessity is the mother of invention. Greg is the culmination of need to, not having necessarily the resources. Now, somebody here is going to say I could have gotten the resources because my family is pretty well off. I mean, I have family who's really comfortable. I just wanted to fight to figure it out. Does it help that I have the background of the union steward for the Teamsters? Of course. Does it matter that I spent 4 years in education? Yes. Does it matter that I have some education? Yes. Does it matter that I've been all over the world? Yes. Does it matter that I grew up in a military home with parents who have advanced degrees, or a total of whatever number of degrees my mother and dad have? Yes. Does it help a little bit? Or that I have a brother who's a doctor, has a PhD in engineering? Yes. There's a lot of things in my background that help me. And I'm still wanting to get back into school because I don't want to be the dumbest person in my family. I have a daughter who's a doctor. I have a son who's going his way to grad school. I have another one who's going to be she told me today that I was wrong, everybody. My baby wants to be some kind of therapist. I'm going to tell you what it was. I didn't know. I've been seeing she wants to be a clinical psychiatrist, but it's called some kind of therapist. And I said, does that have anything to do with dad? She wants to be she's going to be a cognitive behavioral therapist. And I said, that has to do with that? And I have one more chance. I have one and wanted to be a mortician, so hey, knock himself out. And I have one more chance for an attorney. Nobody wants to be an attorney. I don't understand. I need more lawyers. Like, I don't need tough guys. I need lawyers. I don't need doctors. We got doctors in our family. We have the MD style doctors. My daughter's a pharmacist, but I have a cousin who's a OBGYN. We need more lawyers. I have IT doctors. I need lawyers in the family. We need lawyers to become judges. We need these things. But I'm the product of experience, and my know-how came because I've had to travel this road of attrition to get there. And I'm not limited to, or even to auto negligence, because they're speaking to the 2024 case without speaking to the other cases that I have for auto negligence cases that I settled.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You don't have to be technically sound, they just need to be coherent. So just ask the question. And what I gave you was something for free.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, we got somebody else up. Yeah, here they're gonna come. No, when you put out information or you ask a question, I tell people, if you're gonna ask the question, do your research for it first. So when you said normally or generally or courts require this, I said, well, what rule states that? I know it needs to be what you have to do in order to plead punitive damages under Florida law. And I'm pretty confident that if you read the entire complaint and even the amended complaint for punitive damages, it's articulated in that complaint. My motion for leave to amend to include punitive damages, I'm almost positive it's in there. And why do you think I would know what's in that complaint, that motion for leave to amend for punitive damages, Maestro? Tell them. How would I know what's in it?
Because it's yours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote it.
And to your point, I think that's also a good lesson when it comes to, I know when it comes to me using the AI, that oftentimes, I'm not gonna say often, but enough times, it will come back to me. It'll do some analysis, and I'll tell it to do some research, give me your thoughts on it. It'll come back to me, and it'll come back to me with an incomplete answer. And this is something that I've had to train, both Claude and ChatGPT in the instructions more than anything to not do that, right? Don't give me an answer and then say at the end of the answer, but I have not done the research yet. I cussed it. Listen, man, when my other one, I cussed this motherfucker out so much, man. I'd be like,
Ain't another motherfucking word, and this shit is over.
I feel like Pinky on next Friday. You know what I'm saying?
I'm certain that judges might feel the same way when they're dealing with people who go with, well, I know. Well, the judge may just say, okay, just tell me. I remember I was in Saginaw, I think it was in Saginaw, Michigan, handling with somebody taking care of had to do with a property case. It's kind of like a squatting case, what have you. And the judge, God bless him, he's from Michigan, like the other judge with the glasses. They have the same demeanor. And he said to the lady, and I read the other person's filings. I'm like, this is just horrible. But the individual I was with was like, we go in front of the judge, and the judge says, the judge already had his mind made up. But he said to the party who lost terribly, I just need to know what made you think that you had a right to this. The judge was just confused. And unlike the person I was with, who's like Miss Ginsu 2090, she's like worse than a Terminator. She just didn't want to hear it. But I was like, you can tell when a person wants to get over, and when a person wants to really has a genuine thought that they're entitled, that they have an entitlement. based upon some legitimate set of facts. And I've done this long enough and have been involved with enough situations. And not to mention, I didn't even mention that I used to work with a law firm. I've done independent research for law firms, and I learned a lot from attorneys. You gain an eye through repetition. And what I try to tell people when we do these things here is, this is the perfect opportunity to get information that doesn't cost you, and there's not a whole lot on the line, that will allow you to move forward in what you're doing. I have a whole, I show my entire thing, everything from good, bad, indifference, man. But from the time I started self-representing fully or on a more full-scale basis, like 2011, I believe, I've put in, I don't even know how, I know I put in more than this, was 7,000 hours. I've well eclipsed that.
10,000, I would think, they say.
Oh, for mastery?
Yeah, the 10,000 hours is the mastery.
Yeah. You're talking about 6 or 7 driving out license cases that all came to favor. And most of them were charged as felonies that got reduced to misdemeanors and then got dismissed. The child support situation, those are well documented. The perjury and official proceeding, which you can go and look up, I won that. Plenty of arrests, just avoiding the convictions, and what you learn along the way. And as it comes to what makes me different than a lot of guys, I did part of the backstory, and I thought we talked about it, is that I did not know what I needed to know when I had a time sharing or custody case with my oldest son now. And I told people that if I'd had 1/20th of this knowledge, the way that story turned out would not have gone that way. Because could you imagine dealing with a 30-year-old me with this body of knowledge? I'm 58 years old now. Could you imagine them dealing with a 30-year-old me? The energy levels are different. The focus is different. The attention to detail and the knowledge. Because really, I'm the product of what I've learned. And I just share that. And I try to help people become better at this thing, because there's a lot of people on social media, and there's some people who are I'll say they're like in my corner or whatever, that would like for me to be more like Rob in the industry. I'm not here to do that. The beast and the shout, calling people out, it's for young people. I don't have time for that. But I think the record of what I've done is out there. That's why we don't redact case numbers, do we?
Right. No, we don't. We don't at all. That's why I think it's important that people who are going to utilize your story or utilize your input, to utilize the AI, because the AI could help subsidize, it could help, mitigate the lack of information or understanding of the information. And that way, when it's time to go to the main source, you're just more, you're more prepared. I think that's something that I've learned a lot in terms of not just dealing with Greg, but just being in this game in general, is that I'm not going to have everything memorized in terms of all the legal terms, right? But doesn't mean that I'm not going to learn about what they are. And I know the more that I review them and I keep looking at them, like the repetition part that you're mentioning, the more and more I understand them. And I don't always, I'm not going to say RC, rules of the RC 27 dash, that's just, I'm not, listen, that's not me. I'm not trying to memorize this because that will blow my head up. I can't memorize all that stuff. But what I can say is, using layman's terms, understanding what the rule is, understanding how to use it appropriately, so that way I don't feel entitled to something that I might not get, or I shouldn't get based on my position. Right. And I think that's something that I think we all can learn from, is just one, being able to articulate ourselves better, ask questions. But to my point before that I was making was going and using the AI and it giving me an answer, but then asking me or telling me, hey, I haven't done the research. And I go, why did you give me the answer? If you haven't done the full research, that means you're giving me an incomplete answer. And the AI is not the only thing that does it. People do it all the time. We do it all the time. And then anytime that I use the AI and it says the word if, going back to, the facts aspect of why the facts aren't the only thing that you need on your tool belt in order for you to, potentially have the relief that you're looking for, is because facts alone are not enough, right? And so that's why
using using a set of facts that's not material to your situation.
And that
I had on an Army hat, a black T-shirt, and a GD Napsy background. What does that have to do with me trying to prove whether I was going 60
right,
or 45?
right. That's key. That's a good point. So that's why I think that folks that are gonna,
you said something about I can't memorize it, but I would go back to the elephant theory. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at, you got to take it one bite at a time. Yeah.
You memorize them by taking one bite at a time. And there may be a gift in there with me, but again, some would say it's a gift because Ms. Benell says all the time, I spit out statutes. I even had an attorney say, I don't understand how you remember these statutes like that. Well, I have background because the statutes remind me of what I learned when I read the union contract. It's based on chapters, articles, and then sections, And I memorized the entire bargaining unit book. I became a union steward because I was elected. They petitioned for me and elected me. I took it seriously, but a lot of it no different than memorizing a song. You can memorize bars from specific songs. All I did was replace the bar with something else. And if you take the same amount of time I don't know, drill music is short, but say the same time you spend listening to 5 or 6 songs a day, 15 minutes, and you dedicated 15 minutes toward this. By the end of the week, you're that's an hour and 45 minutes. At the end of the year, you have how many more hours of study when you do that times 52? So you have somewhere around 85 or 90 hours of study that's dedicated to something. Do that, no matter what it is that you may want to know or you may want to master. But when you multiply it by very much more, like by a lot more, I should say, I went from listening to talk radio, which, I was on talk radio guy. Yeah, Greg Doss is DJ Squid, sure. Greg Doss can cut, mix, scratch, yes. Greg Doss' first love is sports. But Greg Doss knew he had to dedicate himself. He knew that to win, I had to dedicate myself. Greg Doss is still an athlete, he's still a wide receiver. So he knows what it takes to be successful. If you want to get on the field, I had to work to get on the field. Was I athletic? Yeah, I was athletic enough. We're not talking about high school. At the high school, everybody can play in high school. So what you have to do to get on the field afterwards when you're playing against guys who are better, you have to put in the work. You got to put in work when people aren't watching. So that when you show up on the field, while they're trying to figure out why you can perform, your job is just not to have them. Let them worry about that. My job is to perform. Right? So when I walk into a courtroom, I'm ready to perform. I had to calibrate myself because Squid might say something to him when somebody said something slick to me, because Brett may want to let his hands go, work, So it's knowing how to operate and how to get what you want while you're in the right space, and the people should be more thankful to you for bringing out for doing what we do here, because you give them opportunities to merge. What's it called, tech with grit? Because I'm just grit, you're tech. And then you can bring on like Macadamia, he's a philosophical guy, I guess. Ms. Manel is versed in the world of insurance and policy, and also property management. So she understands how government rules affect how people can rent places and stuff like that. We have my man Andre, who's a high-level accountant, right? He's on board, high-level accountant, corporate accountant. So when it comes to looking at your books, we have guys who do that. And we have other guys who are administrators and things in their own professions who have no problem dedicating their time to helping guys and women, by the way, learn to do these things. And I have educators. At the end of the day, I'm still, my first thing was I'm supposed to be a school teacher. So that was my first thing. I would have thought I would have retired from that by now. But so I'm here to help people learn to be better. I think we spend too much time focused on things that don't matter. So And we also have a court reporter. Don't forget Taisha Scott reporting. Those transcripts made my case much more solid.
Yes, I can only imagine, because without them, you probably would. And those are the facts, right? The transcripts are part of the facts, and information. So I think that that's something that is a big part of what we're just sharing today and what we wanted to discuss. And we went from, I would say, a few different topics in between, but the main part was the whole aspect of understanding why the facts alone are not going to be your saving grace, but does not negate the fact that you still want to be factual. You still want to be accurate, right? I don't think that anybody is going to have their best opportunity if they're not factual, right? But that's why I thought that in my perspective, just combining both understandings, making sure that the facts are the facts and you have them correctly, but then also the legal arguments and your positioning and you doing your homework and if you aren't going to hire a lawyer, you have to dig deep into it. If you are going to hire a lawyer, you should still dig into it. But obviously that's what they're there for the deeper stuff. It just helps that you know what you're getting into, because at the end of the day, whatever that ruling is, it falls on us, in terms of what the situation is. And I think that that's pretty much the main topic, the meat and potatoes of the discussion. Anything you think that we did not go over or that we missed, in this conversation?
You could, I think we covered a lot. The bigger thing is putting things together in a manner that's going to help get the resolution you seek, whatever it might be. At the end of it all, within what you gave him today, facts tell the court what happened. Arguments tell the court why it must do something. As in, what I told you, I cut, or you said, I didn't say, you said Gemini, whatever thing is that you used said, cut to why the court owes you the relief you're seeking. And the people who win keep those things in the right container at the end of the day. So I tell people this also. Make sure you subscribe to this man's channel. Get these AI, these tech tips. I don't want to say AI. Get the tips for technology that he has to offer on his platform, and which is pretty impeccable. But tell them about your platform, and I'll close this out and get us out of here. Tell them about what you do and the things that you can definitely help people with. You help no dinosaur like me, right?
I ain't gonna say all that, but I definitely will appreciate. I appreciate everything that you've done, and us combining our skill sets together. And like you said already, the technology part, that's something that I'm a little bit more versed in than a lot of folks, or
A lot more
yeah.
than me.
And it's only just because, like with Greg, when you have a background and you've done a lot of things, you just, energy is not destroyed, it's merely transferred. And my background had a lot to do with AV, and then I took that energy and started my own agency and helping people start their own business, uh, build their websites, build their online systems. And then this AI stuff came in and started getting more popular. And I actually was using it a lot earlier, as they call the word, or as they say the word, early adopter. So I was an early adopter. So a lot of this stuff, like when it comes to Greg, it's like I always say, to him, he already knows because he's been through this. He's already been through this. So it's just like it's muscle memory for him. And for me, it's the same thing when it comes to the AI. I have to learn, that I have to break it down, Greg, to you sometimes, because I know I take for granted that it's just natural to me. So when it comes to a lot of this technology stuff, I'm glad that we're doing what we're doing, because we are merging. Like, we're using StreamYard right now just to do this video, right? We're using technology just to share information, let alone telling people like, hey, you guys got to use this AI, use this technology. Hopefully soon we'll have a chat bot, Greg. We'll have a chat bot set up for you guys, so that way you guys can stop bothering Greg about minor stuff. But yeah, and I will be helping Greg build the chat bot in terms of the technology. And I know he just redid the website not too long ago and used Claude, I believe, to help him do that. And as he mentioned, you said what?
Can't believe nothing. No, Claude
Right.
gave some instructions and it built it, and it made sure that as I try to navigate around the unlicensed practice of law moniker that was pushed against me or what have you, and it's because there are entities that don't want people being as informed and successful, because without the adversarial relationships, you won't make the same kind of money. Which, I just want to see people be informed. I will never stop being a teacher, but my situation is not narrowed as I like it to be. But one thing is for sure, if they're that focused on what I'm doing, I might be doing something right.
100%. If we keep doing this, I think that we're gonna do some big things. And this is just the beginning. The channel Primi Pregro, it started from my passion to want to share information based on my story, and the whole notion of my channel was me merging and sharing my own battles without necessarily giving legal advice, but being able to also use it as a way to I don't want to say therapy, but just express myself, and I know other people are going through a lot of this fight too. For my stuff, I'm a fighting father, so that's what my channel is mainly for young men or for men that are in the court system. But it doesn't mean that women aren't watching or can't watch and learn things too. Because again, I'm focused on using technology. I'm not Greg. I do not have his background. I don't want his background. I can't get his background, even if I try to buy it on the black market. It ain't happening. So when it comes to my channel, it's a passion of mine. It's not necessarily my breadwinner, my income. But when it comes to my company, the Iconic Expressions, you can go to the website. That's my breadwinner. That's my income. That's when I'm helping small businesses or even professionals build out their systems, build out their tool set, as we say, or learn more about AI. If you need one-on-one consulting, I'll put my information in the chat. But that's what I do.
Outstanding. And tell everybody you didn't tell them how to find you. Get their own mind.
Oh, yeah. So you can go to the iconicexpressions.com as far as the website. You can also find me on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, Maestro Stevens, I'm there. In terms of YouTube, I mean, you can pretty much find my YouTube channels as well too. Well, this is the Primi Prego one, but in terms of the Iconic Expressions, I do have a tech channel called Iconic Templates. So if you want to learn more about technology, I'll share that in the chat as well too. Go to Iconic Templates, and then you can also find me there. Let me pull the channel.
Primi Prego, right?
You said what?
Isn't it Primi Prego? What's your what is your YouTube? Your YouTube? Yeah, your YouTube channel. What's it called?
The tech channel is Iconic Templates. This one.
Yeah, this one here.
Yep. This one that obviously that we streaming from is the Primi Prego one. And the main reason, yeah. And it's just all about I would say compartmentalizing. That's the difference between and the opportunity that we have is if we have certain ideas or passions or trades, hobbies, whatever the case is, you can't fit everything under. I mean, Greg said you got to narrow things down, right? And so when you try to fit everything underneath one thing, then you can confuse people. And then as they say in the marketing world, if you confuse, you lose. So the last thing you want to do is confuse people by trying to, make a YouTube channel and put everything underneath the one roof. As far as I know, Greg, you ain't talking about building houses on your channel. That's like, what I'm saying? But if you like to build houses, I don't know, maybe you do, but yeah, I would advise creating a new YouTube channel for that. So you got to be smart about it, y'all. You cannot put everything underneath one roof, right? There's a reason why real estate is what real estate is, and Google is real estate, whether you understand it or not. Google is real estate. So I try to make sure I separate the two.
So it's McDonald's, it's real estate.
Right. It's real estate. It's all about real estate. So yeah, I separate the two. But the thing is that even on this channel, Primi Prego, I still teach with AI. Except on this channel, I'm focused on using AI for litigation, right? Using AI to help in this situation. my tech channel is using AI to help you build your systems out. Like Greg did when he built out his new website. That would be something that my tech channel would support him with. How you build a website using AI.
You walk me through that. So, hey, I appreciate it. Now, I wanted to make sure I recapped it properly. So when people walk out of here with the lessons that this was designed to give them, which is, and keeping in mind that as you talked about, the facts tells the court what happened, the arguments tell the court why they have to act or why they must act. Make sure you keep that in mind, keeping them in the right containers and properly categorized. And when you do that, and I believe we talked about this last week, then your evidence starts working for you and not against you. So just keep that in mind if you take nothing else from this. Another thing I want you, before you get out of here, subscribe here. Subscribe on my man Preem Prego's channels and his other sites. And he covers stuff that most guys will never understand when it comes to this tech stuff, I'm pretty sure. And if you're an old head like me and you still want to learn other things, and they're not even court related, it could be about everything else, make sure you talk to him. Starting August 25th, a week from Tuesday, 2 times a week, Tuesday and Wednesday, at my other channel, which we now built, the Greg Dawes DJ Squid podcast channel, and you'll be able to listen to me on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, all of these other channels. Go over there right now and subscribe to that so that you don't miss any of my podcasts. On those podcasts, I'm going to share my story, a lot more of my background. It'll be a lot more succinct and coherent, and hopefully it can help a lot of people out. Make sure that if you need a court reporter and she may be remote, and if not, if anything else, I'm going to shout out for always. I love Miss Taisha Scott of Scott Reporting. She does depositions, hearings remotely across Florida, and her costs are great. Go to scott-reporting.com. The record is everything. Get it right. And if tonight might have moved you, you can always super chat. I appreciate the super chat from my man Macadamia, who's in there, Anthony Rollins. I bring him on and we can finish up a few of our discussions that we had on my Greg Dawes GD Napsy YouTube channel, which is not going to go anywhere. I just think that the podcast is a better way for me to get the message to a lot of other people and hopefully be helpful. But again, you can always super chat or you can cash at me, $GD Napsy, and I'll double whatever your Cash App contribution is to any session you book with me. And if you're ready to work with me one-on-one for coaching and education only, keeping in mind I'm not an attorney, don't have a license to practice law, don't practice law, I just study it. But I help try to build your confidence. And you can book me with me at gdnapsc.as.me, or just go to www.gdnapsc.com. The information is there. If you need to call my girl, I forgot to put her number in the Scott Reporting, 954-383-4955. I'm going to bring her on as well. And it's always important. Sometimes it's not about right or wrong. More important, it's about clarity. You never reach resolution if you're not willing to engage in honest dialogue. Even if the dialogue is with yourself, take time to hug the person you love, the person you hug. Always stand firm, stand up, be confident. Shout out to all veterans. I'm saying peace. I'm saying chicken grease. I'm out.
All right,
see y'all next week.
And to the ladies out there, Lego to Prego. Peace.